in many other places, about the inyan of a mishpat. So in Zeichukas it comes up. In the Mugi the Kamaim of Zeichukas, this is mentioned to look here. Because Zeichukas also obviously talks about the inyan of mishpatim and chukim. So the last thing we saw is that the relationship to a mishpat, there's two ways one can relate to the fact that it has to do a mishpat like a choik. Meaning the Eibusher said don't steal. Okay. So I have to relate to that as being a function of the ratzon of the Eibusher. So that could either be mitzad me, that my relationship with that halacha, with that mitzvah is that I don't treat it like a mishpat, I treat it like a choik. So that the Rebbe says that's not the pshat, and the fact that the idea of the mishpat is to be a choik. The idea is, and this is Ella, we'll start from the second line as soon as the door is closed. Elagam mitzad ha-mitzvahs. Thank you. Elagad gam mitzad ha-mitzvahs. Not just mitzad the oise mitzvah. That I could say it's as if this thing is l'mayla mitam v'das. Really it's not, but I'm relating to it as if it is. No. Elagam mitzad ha-mitzvahs. These are the last lines we saw yesterday. Ki kol ha-mitzvahs, gam ha-mitzvah sheyesh aleim tam. All of the mitzvahs, third line on page chaf. All of the mitzvahs. Even those mitzvahs that have a tam, Himritzani Yisbarach. The etzem of the mitzvah is not the etzem mamish, but the what's a mitzvah mamish? The ratzon of the Eibusher. That's what the Eibusher wants. That means that's its source. Ratzon shelamayla mitam, a ratzon which is beyond tam. Rak shekach gazer hakadosh baruch sheratzon the mitzvahs elu yizlavish gam betam. But relative to mishpatim, so the Eibusher wanted that the ratzon of this mitzvah should be understood by seichel anoshi, by human intellect. Okay, now in Zoyz Chukas again, the Rebbe does rep there, so the Rebbe is explaining that every choik actually has a mishpat. There is a seichel to every choik, meaning every expression of the Eibusher's ratzon is also misalavish and seichel. The question is, where's the seichel? How far down, so to speak, does that ratzon descend? So relative to certain mitzvahs like paraduma, so the ratzon only descends down into the seichel into chokhmah of Etzilos. The ratzon descends into chokhmah. The question is what level. So the ratzon descends into chokhmah Etzilos. Okay, that means that it's not accessible to you and I. Moshe Rabbeinu understood it because Moshe Rabbeinu's conscious reality in this world was chokhmah Etzilos. Right, most it's mentioned over there in Zoyz Chukas was just a very, very important point. Relative to everybody but Moshe, there's a psik beineim, Yaakov, Avram, even Havaya, right? In Havaya Kel Rachum V'Chanun, there's a psik beineim in the Tamim. There's a little separation between the two words. By Moshe ain't psik beineim. There's no psik beineim. What does that mean in Pnimius? That Moshe Rabbeinu and Elam Hazeh and Moshe Rabbeinu and Etzilus are one and the same thing. Moshe Rabbeinu's conscious reality here was exactly the same as Moshe Rabbeinu's conscious reality in Etzilus. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu could understand down here the chokhmah of Dum. The question is, how far down does it descend? There are mitzvahs where the ratzon of the Eibusher is mislavish in chokhmah dasiya, in chokhmah of this world. That means you and I can understand it. There are other mitzvahs where it's only mislavish in chokhmah the yitzira. What would that mean? That would mean that you and I could understand it mitzad the ruchnias of it, but not mitzad the gashmias of it. What's an example of shatnez? So shatnez, I can't understand al pi gashmias why you can't. There's no reason. Al pi gashmias, meaning that you could check out in a laboratory why wool and linen can't be sewn together. Al pi teva, al pi gashmias, there's no reason in the world for that not to happen. Right? No, it's the ratzon of the Eibusher, but it's not a ratzon that's not mislavish in seichel in any way, shape, or form, because there are ramazim to this. On a spiritual level, we understand how wool and linen might not mix. What's the remez in the Torah for the fact that wool and linen might not mix? What did Hevel bring as a korban? Cain and Hevel, Cain and Abel. What did Hevel bring?
Oh, them.
Oh, them. What did Hevel bring? Sheep.
What?
Sheep.
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 Oh, sheep.
Sheep. What comes from sheep? Wool. What did Cain bring? Flax. What comes from flax? Linen. Oh, manyan. Wool and linen don't seem to mix very well in that spiritual realm. In Gashmias, there's absolutely nothing in Gashmias that will show me that those two things somehow don't relate to each other in a positive way. But in Ruchnis, I can see they don't relate to each other in a positive way. So there's a remez to the fact, but it's not a remez in Gashmias, it's a remez in Ruchnis. Cain and Hevel is the remez to the fact that wool and linen don't. In other words, if you live in Eilam HaYetzirah, you might be able to understand this. We don't live in Eilam HaYetzirah. We live in Eilam HaAsiyah. So in Eilam HaAsiyah, there's no seichel to it. So that's the flip side of what the Rebbe is saying here. That's the fact that every Ratzon is actually mislavish and seichel on some level. Right? The question is, how far down does it descend? What about those mitzvahs that you and I call chukim? So they don't descend at all, or very little. So that means that you and I can't understand it. But the reason that we do it isn't because we don't relate to it. Well, the Rebbe's talking about the mishpat. We don't do the mishpat as a chayk because I'll say that's how I should relate to it. We have to understand also, and this is what the Rebbe is going to explain now, that I truly don't understand the reason. V'lo for fourth line. Ela shegam tamei mitzvahs. Even the reasons of the mitzvahs, kameshem lamitosim, as they are in truth, meaning as they are in chokhmah datzilus, heim lamayla mi'avana deseichel hanoshi. I don't understand what a chokhmah datzilus looks like. Moshe does, but I don't. So there might be certain mitzvahs that only descend that far. Paraduma, the seichel of paraduma only descends into chokhmah datzilus. So that's what I understand. That's what I understand relative to its descent into seichel. Okay. But that means I can't understand it because I don't live there. What if I do live there? So I could understand it. Moshe understood it. That's why, the whole, all of Zois Chukas, the whole Maimer is trying to explain, explains how it is that Moshe Rabbeinu is the source of you and I doing a chayk, if for him there's no chayk. If Moshe Rabbeinu understands Paraduma, so then how can he possibly be the source of, it's called Paras Moshe, right? Zois Chukas Torah, and it's called Moshe's Para, it's Moshe's Torah. Right, so then how can it possibly be that he gives you and I the koyach to do that as a chayk if for him it's not a chayk? That's the whole Maimer explains that in terms of who Moshe is. Right? But here, so the Rebbe is looking at the flip side of the coin. It's the same coin though, it's exactly the same idea. The mishpat, just like the chayk is there's a level in which every chayk descends into chokhmah, into seichel, so too there's a reality in which every mishpat is really rotzon. And that's its true reality. And even on the level of Chachma, that which I understand isn't necessarily the true understanding. Human intellect can't understand the true reason for a mitzvah. The true reason for mitzvahs. Is how they are in the Chachma of the Eibishter, Chachma Datzilus. I could even be higher, but Chachma Datzilus. And since the Chokhmah of the Eibishter ain't safe, it's unlimited. Most particularly by virtue of the fact when we say Hashem Echad, what does that mean? That means that every faculty of the Eibishter and the Eibishter himself are really one. Right? And you and I are what's called a composite being. Right? When we say Hashem Echad, what do we mean? So there's a simple pshat in Hashem Echad. There's Hashem Echad ve'en sheni. There isn't another God. Right? Okay, fine. But that's not what your kavanah should be when you say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad every day. Well, your true kavanah should be that the Eibishter is in a state of absolute oneness. And what does that mean? That means, simply, there's no simply to it because you and I can't, we don't experience reality in this way. But every being in this world is a composite of many, many, many things. You and I don't know, Yossi Jackson loves to, throw out a number of how many cells are in every human. I don't know, 62,127,000, whatever. He loves these numbers, right? Okay, whatever it is, there's a lot of them. There's more than 4, right? There's a lot more than 4. Okay, so what does that mean? That means I'm a composition of all sorts of little things that are stuck together into one big thing. But that one big thing is not existentially one. That one big thing is all sorts of other things acting in concert one with the other to create one big thing. But again, it's not one essentially. That's why if chas v'shalom, a person were to lose part of themselves, they don't exist less. You can actually cut, God forbid, you can cut off the arm of a person and he exists just as much as he existed before you cut off his arm. No difference in his existence. Beseder, it might be less, it might be harder for him to do certain things in Eilam Hazeh, but that's all tifkud, that's all just function. It's essential being. Okay, whereas the Eibishter, this thing is cutting off a piece of the Eibishter, so to speak, because each aspect of the Eibishter is one with his totality, which is very, very hard for us to understand. When the Rambam describes it, so he describes it and says this is very hard to understand, and then the Raavad gets very upset at the Rambam. It's so hard to understand. Why did you start? But okay, so it's happening on the mountaintops, and we're down here in the valleys, right? So the idea of the unity of the Eibishter is that his Chochmah and him are one. You and I, Chochmah is a power that is, so to speak, part of us, but imposed upon us. And were it to be that a person, again, Chochmah is a bad example because it's so essential, but even that you could do without, theoretically, right? I mean, it wouldn't be much of a life, but a person weighs just as much. I mean, what they used to do to violent criminals in America, right? The frontal lobotomy. So basically, what did they take out of that person? It's Ratzon. They had no Ratzon left. I just sat there and drooled all day.
Okay. Become president.
What?
Could become president.
Could become president. Right? Sleepy Joe. So when they do the frontal lobotomy, so they take out a piece of brain. Now that piece of brain seems to be the source of. It's not that the Ratzon is maluvish in the brain, because we know Ratzon is a makif, but that's the part of the brain that processes the Ratzon and brings the Ratzon into conscious you and me. And once that part of the brain isn't there, so then the person basically has no more will, and they just sit in a chair. They just sit there and they don't do anything, and they feed them pablum. Okay, so that person doesn't exist any less than anybody else. Right? I bet they're missing such an incredible part of themselves. They weigh the same. Right? If God forbid you were to kill that person, it'd be Chayat Misa. It's murder. Right? Now you might think it's a good idea, right? Okay, Beseder, but that's exactly why we don't not murder based on the intellectual understanding of not murdering. We don't murder because God said don't murder. So what if Hashgacha Pratis puts a person in a place where their life is basically, for all intents and purposes, the way we would understand it, meaningless? Nothing's happening. Okay, so you might say, well, this is a reasonable person to murder. That's what Chief thought, right? Chief murdered that guy in that famous book about the frontal lobotomies in America, which had a lot to do with getting rid of frontal lobotomies in America. Actually, that book, I forget the name of the book, but whatever, right? At the end of the book, the guy who has the frontal lobotomies is killed by his friend who jumps out the window and disappears from a mental asylum, right? Okay, Beseder, was he right? Well, in the movie he is, right?
Yeah.
Why? Because don't murder is Alpi Seichel. In real life, he's not. Why not? Because don't murder is because the Eibishter said don't murder, and I don't know why. I don't know why the Eibishter decided that guy should have a frontal lobotomy. I don't understand that either, right? Why would the Eibishter do that to anybody? Oh. Does it make sense? On a certain level of reality it does, not where you and I live, but on another level of reality it makes perfect sense. Right? Might be a very, very lofty level, and you and I will never get there. Right? Okay. Say that. Will that be revealed by Yemei Mashiach? Who knows? Might not even be revealed by Yemei Mashiach, certain things. Who knows? Right? But where's it coming from? It's coming from a level of chokhmah that's completely transcendent of ours, a level of chokhmah that's one with the essence of the Eibishter. Right? It's one with the Eibishter himself. Harei ein shayach, therefore it's not reasonable. Sheseichel mugbal d'nivroim, the limited seichel of created beings, yuchol lahasik, are able to comprehend amiti satam the mitzvahs, the true reason of mitzvahs. Why did the Eibishter say don't murder? I don't know. Why does it make sense according to seichel anoshi not to murder? Can't have a society of people who are worried about getting shot in the street. You just can't live that way. You just can't live that way. It's not shaykh. Right? Okay. There are people who live that way, but it's a ridiculous way to live. Right? A society can't work that way. That makes sense. I get that. But that's love dafka why the Abraham said don't murder. Mitzvahs, that the true reasons of mitzvahs leinis galu were not revealed. And they're beyond intellect. Beyond the comprehension. V'gam, and now the Rebbe, of course, borrows the lashon of the Mishnah. V'gam be'ezu makayim, if there happens to be a place, shenisgala v'nisparesh, that it is revealed and it is explained, ezetam, a particular reason, a muvan lanu l'cha'ura, that is understood by us at first glance, l'cha'ura, you would think it's understood by us. In a tam zeh hamuvan lanu, that which is understood by us ain't a tachlis atam. It's not the ultimate reason. The ultimate reason is a reason that seichel, the seichel eloki understands, not seichel anoshi. What does this look like in Chachmat Atzilas? I haven't got a clue. And there's a very simple mashal in Elam Hazeh. Parents tell children to do things all the time. The child understands it one way, and the parent understands it another way. Right? The child doesn't necessarily understand exactly why the parent wants him to do what it is that he does. That doesn't mean that the kids don't sit and discuss why their parents tell them to do these things and come up with some conclusion as to why it might be. Is that really why? No, that's not why the parents want them to do something. But now those are two relatively close levels of finite intellect. Relatively. In our world, they're far apart, but I mean, they're relatively close to each other. The intellect of the 8-year-old and the intellect of the 40-year-old. Right? Okay. In our world, they're Mayanot. Okay. So the 8-year-old has this idea as to why it is he's being told to do something. That's really why his parents are telling him to do. Of course not. They have a completely different conception of reality and life and what it means and how to bring up kids. Okay. So Allah has come when you're talking about finite and infinite. Which is a very, very important idea to understand. That even the mishpat is l'mayla mitam v'das, be'etzim. The inyan zeh, this idea, shatama muvan lanu, that the reason that's understood by us in a tachlis atam is not the ultimate reason. So the Rebbe says something very important. Muvan gam b'seichel haneshi. Even human intellect can understand this. Meaning, as a matter of fact, this makes much more sense than any other idea. If someone were to walk into this room and try to convince you that the Eibishter's reason for not murdering and our reason for not murdering are one and the same, I think you'd find them rather laughable. Right? Al pi seichel, al pi human intellect. You read this. This is really God. Like this is the God that you believe in or don't believe in or whatever it happens to be your particular hang-up this day. Right? Most of the God that most people don't believe in, so we don't believe in that God either. Right? Because that God doesn't exist. Right? That limited God who theoretically should act in accordance with what human intellect understands as proper behavior. I believe in that God. Right? That doesn't mean we wouldn't like him to, so we could understand it and it would make sense to us. It's things that don't make sense to us, that's obvious. Things that happen on a more global level and things that might happen on a more personal level. Obviously, we don't understand everything. We'd like to understand it. We'd like it to be something understood, so then we could make sense of it all. Okay. But that's not the way he works. Right? He often works that way. It's really quite astounding how much he does work that way. Right? He doesn't have to. But etzim is beyond all that. So even human intellect can understand the fact that there's something beyond human intellect, and obviously the Eibush is that. Obviously human intellect understands simply that limited intellect it's not in its ability to comprehend the Chokhmah of Kadosh Baruch Hu, which is unlimited. Why in the world would I think I could understand that? It's a ridiculous idea. V'adarabba, au contraire. Zeh shebe'ezim akeim, and again the Rebbe borrows the lashon of the Mishnah, that which in a particular place nisgala v'nisparesh is a tama muvan lanu, that in a particular situation, so it's revealed and explained a reason that is understood to us. Hu pella gadol, that's the pella. The fact that there's anything we do understand relative to the way the Eibishter does things and also relative to Torah and mitzvahs is absolutely astounding. Because this is the Ratzon of the Eibishter, and that Ratzon is L'mayla Mishum Agbala. It's beyond any limitation. And this, even though this Ratzon is mislavish in Chochmah, as every Ratzon is, that's Zayis Chukas, the Rebbe doesn't say it here, right? But every Ratzon is mislavish in Chochmah. Even that Ratzon is mislavish in Chochmah, ad kedei kach, that Chochmah and that the Chochmah Sa'adam, that the Seichel Anoshi, human intellect, can understand it. Even that is ultimately L'mayla Mitam V'das. And the very fact that there's any way, shape, or form for you and I to have any inkling of any understanding of this thing, that's Pashat Apella. That's absolutely astounding. That there's something about the Ratzon of the Eibusha that you and I should be able to understand. V'hura chesed avaya, and this is just the chesed of the Eibusha. Shegam Seichel Adam Yeloi Eza Hasaga B'zeh. That the human intellect should have any comprehension in this whatsoever. That's the amazing Medrash. The Medrash says Moshe Rabbeinu is learning Torah with the Eibusha, kept learning it and forgetting it. Learning it and forgetting it. Till the Eibusha gave it to him as a matana. Then he remembered. Meaning what? That you have to appreciate the fact that learning Torah it's all a matana. It's all something that came from the Eibusha. And learning Torah is all about connecting to the Nois in the Torah, the one who gave it, the one who gave that matana. That's what learning Torah is all about. Right? That's Dafka, the last week's parsha, right? Bor Reikein by Mayim, the idea of the Mayim. There's no Mayim. What's Mayim? Mayim's Torah, but Mayim is only a specific aspect of Torah. Torah can be Lechem, Torah can be Yayin, Torah can be Shemen, Torah can be Mayim. What's the Inyan of Mayim Shabbatar? The Rebbe explains. Mayim Shabbatar is that aspect of Torah that comes from above and is found below, right? Like Mayim. Mayim starts in a high place and descends to a low place. Was that so? Bekitzer, the Rebbe explains it at length in the Sikh of it, that the idea of Mayim Shabbatari is not so much the nature of the Torah, but the gisha of the learner of the Torah, the approach of the learner of the Torah. He has to appreciate the fact that he's bottled to the Nois in the Torah, and his learning Torah is connecting him to the Nois in the Torah, and the Nois in the Torah is completely and totally transcendent of him. And yet Torah is that gift that the Eibusha gives us to connect to him. And mitzad ourselves, even Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't remember. Right? Even Moshe Rabbeinu, actually, the Eibusha would teach him. He'd go, well, teach him. What was that again? The Eibusha took out his ruler and gave him a rap on the knuckles. Got to remember. But I forgot. Whap. He didn't do that. Just gave it. In the end, he gave it to him as a matana. That means it's also shaykh to every single one of us. Because that's the nature of a matana. It's given to every single one of us as a matana. Every single Jew has a shaykhus to Torah. Because it's a matana. It's not something that you worked for. It's something the Eibusha gave us. So it's the chesed of the Eibusha to understand anything. V'gam la'achre, and even after, shebechesed avaya, nizgalav nizparish, tama muvan lana. This is the Rebbe talking, who does understand things a little more deeply than we do. And yet he's talking about the limitations of human intellect. Right? Even after al pi chesed avaya nisgalav nisparish tama muvan lanu, there can be a revelation and it can be explained, a reason that is understood by us. How do you do it? It's absolutely clear. I was quoting the Marim in the Vuchim, the Rambam. Shatamu rak al klolos mitzvah. Even this is only relative to the basic nature of the mitzvah, lo yal pratim, but not on all the details of the mitzvah. The details are all a function of the fact that the Eibusha created. I mean, B'chlal, even the klal is all the fact that the Eibusha created the world the way he created the world, and he didn't have to create it this way. He could have created it another way. But even more so, the details of any particular mitzvah are an expression that's completely the Malam Mitam Badas, meaning why is it that reality works such a way that these details would explain this particular general desire of the Kadosh Baruch Hu? Right? Okay. Because Bechlal Pratim are completely the Malam Mitam Badas. Okay, I know there are 10 spheres. Say, why? Why there 10? Why there 12? If there are 12, you'd have an extra finger on each hand. And you'd count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, some other number, and then 10. Because we'd all count in base 12. Right? Why do we count in base 10? Oh, it's 10 spheres. It's 10 fingers, it's 10 toes. It's how the Eibishter created the world. Why 10? I don't know. No clue. Once there's 10, so we can explain all sorts of things. LP 10. But why 10? Kachalabert saying it. That was his desire. There should be 10. So everything's 10. 1 to 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, one group of 10s and 0 units. And if there were 12 spheres, so it'd be 1 to 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, something else, one group of 12 and 0 units. Of course, it wouldn't be called 12, it would be called 10, whatever. There'd be 2 other numbers in there, make them up. Girk and work, right, okay. 9, girk, work, 10. Right? Do they make? Shegam mitzvahs, the edus mishpatim, also the mitzvahs, the edus mishpatim, hem k'may chukim legabeinu. They're ultimately chukim relative to us. And here the Rebbe is saying such an important thing. That it's not my gisha to the mitzvah, which is what a person might think, right? That really the mitzvah has a tam, but I'm relating to it as if it didn't. It doesn't. That's what the Rebbe says up here. It's not tzarich l'kayim mipnei shem ratzon v'ayavhu lo rak mitzad ha'adam ha'makayim. It's not only mitzad me, how I relate to the mitzvah. No, it's mitzad the etzem mitzvah itself. The etzem mitzvah itself is beyond tam v'das. It's called a mishpat. Say that. Why is it called a mishpat? It's called a mishpat because human intellect understands it, but it's sort of the other way around, right? That's what we talked about yesterday, which is such an important thing to understand. Those things that the Torah calls mishpat, so that's the reason human intellect has a basic understanding of those things. If the Torah called kashrus a mishpat, then we would have an intuitive understanding as to why you can't eat milk and meat together. Right? We don't. It's a chayk. Okay. But if the Torah called it a mishpat, so then it would be as clear to us as don't murder and don't steal. Right? Now, that doesn't mean that that's the real reason. The reason we understood would still not be the real reason, just like don't murder and don't steal, but it would be mislavish and seichel and aishi, the tam for basa b'cholov. It's not. Why not? Because it's a chayk. And if the Torah calls it an eila mishpatim shetasim lifneya, leisav asher b'di b'chalev imo, that's the first mishpat. Okay, fine. No problem, I get it. What comes first, the Torah or our intellect? The Torah. The Yibshah looked in the Torah and created the world, so whatever is called a mishpat, so then by definition, human intellect can understand that thing. Whatever is called a chayk, then by definition, human intellect doesn't understand that thing. Shemikol zeh muvan, shegam mitzvahs te'edus u'mishpatim, im k'mei chukim legabeinu, they're chukim relative to us. B'keven shegam tamei mitzvahs, also the tamei mitzvahs, shemitzad chochmasi yizbarach, that are a function of the chokhmah of the Eibishter, heim l'mayla miseichel nivraim, are beyond the intellect of humans, even those mitzvahs where the tam is revealed. Via seder mitzvah, not only are they beyond our intellect, meaning the intellect of them is beyond the intellect of us, which is one level, but there's another level. They're beyond intellect even by the Eibishter. They're also Ratzon. Their true source is Ratzon, which is L'mayla min ha'chokhmah, which is L'mayla mi chokhmah yizbarach. It's even beyond the Eibishter's chokhmah. Ratzoni yizbarach sh'L'mayla gam mi chokhmah yizbarach. The Ratzon of the Eibishter, which is beyond the chokhmah of the Eibishter. What does that mean? That the chokhmah of the Eibishter is infinite. It is infinite, but it's chokhmah. And chokhmah is a power that is able to do certain things. But by definition, it can't do other things. So even the Eibishter's chokhmah is, the Eibishter is unlimited. Okay, but each particular quality, each particular midah of the Eibishter is limited to the extent, and that's why when we talk about 10 spheres, there's 10 spheres, because each of those spheres, even though it's an unlimited expression of that particular reality, it's still only that particular reality. Chokhmah is Chokhmah. It's not Ava. What do you mean? The Eibishter is limited? No, he's not limited. His Chokhmah isn't limited either. But if you're going to divide him up into 10 pieces in order that you can somehow relate to him different ways in terms of his relationship to you, which is what it's all, that aspect of the Eibishter is all about, so then you're going to have to realize that Chokhmah is not Gevura, and Gevura is not Yesod. There's different aspects of the Eibishter. Okay, so whatever Gevura represents is an infinite expression of that reality. Yeah, that's the Eibishter. It's still Gevura, not Chesed. So what does that mean? It's limited? Not limited. It's just Gevura. So what can intellect do? So intellect, the Eibishter's intellect is unlimited relative to whatever intellect does. But it's not Ratzon. Ratzon is a level beyond intellect by definition, even in the Eibishter. Meaning, so to speak, there are things that the Eibishter doesn't understand, so to speak. Why? Because they're not ideas. Right? Can the Eibishter explain to you intellectually why you had a taiva to build, to create a world and have a dir b'dachtanim? No. It's l'mayla min ha'chokhmah. Comes from a place l'mayla min ha'chokhmah. Even in the Eibishter, comes from a place l'mayla min ha'chokhmah. Right? But the Eibishter is infinite. Of course he's infinite. Right? But Chokhmah is Chokhmah, and Chokhmah can only understand those things that Chokhmah can understand. Even the Eibishter is Chokhmah. Now, don't limit the Eibishter to say that the Eibishter is only Chokhmah. No. Hu v'chokhmasai echad. So his Chokhmah is not limited to the extent that it's really an expression of his absolute unity. But where we talk about specifically that aspect of the Eibishter called Chokhmah, can that aspect of the Eibishter understand why he had a taiva to create a dir b'tachtonim? No, that's exactly why we call it a taiva. Because it's beyond Chokhmah. Whose Chokhmah is? Coming from a place, so to speak, in Elokus that's higher than Chokhmah. There's such a place. How do I know? Well, because you were created in the image of God, and there's a place in you that's higher than Chokhmah. So that's how you can appreciate such an idea. What's that place in you? Well, the most obvious place in you is called Ratzon. So his Ratzon is higher than his Chokhmah. So the mitzvah really is coming from that place. Mitzvah is baruch l'mayla gam michokhmasi is baruch. Oh, now we're back to the Greeks. Well, everything we just learned, the Greek Pashut can't deal with it. He just can't handle everything we just learned. He goes Meshuggah. That which the Greeks wanted to move us away, it's not just from Mechukim, it's from any expression of Ritzenecho, which is really by definition a chayik. I mean, even the mishpat. The mishpat's a chayik. Once we get to the level of ratzon, the mishpat's even a chayik on the level of intellect. But halachas kama v'kama once we see its true source in ratzon. Who gamba mitzvahs deidus and mishpatim. That's also the mitzvahs of deidus and mishpatim. Right? Now again, not that he won't. It won't bother him that we do these things per se. It'll bother him that we do these things because God told us to. And even things that we don't understand that we do, okay, but say there's an interesting cultural something that people do. You know, why do Scotsmen wear kilts? They wear kilts. Like, what is that? Kilts. I mean, he's going to explain to me why they wear kilts. Oh, because way back. Well, why'd you do it way back? Why do men walk around in skirts? That's a stupid way to wear, especially in Scotland. It's freezing cold. If you're going to walk around in skirts, walk around in skirts in Uganda. When it's night, they did. They're just short.
Sweatpants.
Right. So I was going to wear sweatpants now. That's all they wear. Right. But they would wear it. So they used to have a little loincloth in Uganda, which was just a short kilt. It was a mini skirt. Right? Right? But so that honestly makes sense. Like, why would you want to wear anything in the, it's so hot? Scotland walking around in a kilt? Anybody who grew up in Canada had to deal with this a lot.
Did you try it?
I never wore a kilt. But in Canada, so at the beginning of any major event, they would have the bagpipes and the guys in the kilts walking around. Screechy, bizarre, screechy noise. He's laughing. It's terrible. Oh, it's just terrible. Oh, it's traumatizing.
Oh yeah.
At the beginning, any sporting event before, school assemblies,
Yeah.
they'll have these, any like serious official event, they'll have, I don't think they do it anymore. They still do it? Probably
When I was in school, they did.
Yeah, okay,
Less.
so-
Like Remembrance Day for sure.
Oh, yeah, okay.
For sure.
So he's young, okay. I mean, I remember this was these bagpipes. These guys walking around in kilts. They are wearing kilts and those shoes with the white on the side and the hat and absolutely the most bizarre thing in the world. Okay, so now where did that come from? Who knows? It just is, That's where it comes from. Right? What's the source of it? Who knows? Now, does that bother the Greek? No, he's not bothered by it. Okay, that's what Scotsmen do. Okay, so the Jews, what do they do? Nice. So they, wear black boxes with leather straps. No problem. Fine. Just don't tell me God told you to do it, and I have no problem. That's the Greek. He's so dangerous, the Greek. I lost my place here. Here we go. He's so dangerous, the Greek. Okay. Because there's a Greek in every single person, right? The Greek is a very powerful expression of the next Bahamas. Because that's the ultimate Yeshua. So if I give up control, so then what's the control? The control is going to be my own seichel, right? That's the control of it all. So the Yevanim bikshu la'avidim mechuker v'seh gam mi'amitzvos deis mechuker ki Yevanim bikshu laker chos v'sholom miYisrael. The Rebbe says it. It's a hergish ha'eloki shebamitzvos. The godly sensitivity of a mitzvah. That's what they wanted to do away with. That's why Hanukkah is such an important holiday. Because you can see that all the time. You see it in yourself, you see it around, you see it in the communities. Take away the hergish eloki shebamitzvos. Right? There was a big Talmud Chacham who was a Supreme Court justice in this country. Again, your dog ate it?
Spanisher made it.
It's Spanish. Right. He was a big Talmud Chacham, and he also was a Supreme Court justice, and he wrote a book called Mishpat Ivri, a scholarly book on the way Jewish law works. Right? Now, he learned in Hebron Yeshiva. He passed away. He'd be 100 years old. He learned in Hebron Yeshiva. He learned in Hebron Yeshiva with someone named Avram Farbstein, who became the Rosh Yeshiva of Hebron Yeshiva. And I happen to know Rabbi Farbstein because Rabbi Farbstein was very close to a lot of kids from Vancouver. For some reason, Rabbi Farbstein adopted kids who came to Eretz Yisrael from Vancouver.
How are you saying his last name?
Farbstein. His son is now the Rosh Yeshiva of Hebron. He was just the most wonderful, warm, kind man. He was the Rosh Yeshiva. He would, Balei Tshuva from Vancouver would knock on his door. Oh, he was such a wonderful man. He was just a completely warm, kind person. Big Talmud Chacham himself. What part of this interesting part of the story is they were on a bus together. A Rosh Yeshiva and a Supreme Court justice are sitting on a bus together. Now they learned in yeshiva together. They knew each other from Hebron. Who knows? Maybe were they around even in now? They weren't old enough to be there in Tarpat. The yeshiva of Hebron was in Hebron until 1929, when there was the massacre, when the Arabs massacred the Jews in Hebron, and then the yeshiva moved to Yerushalayim. It started out in Slobodka, and the yeshiva in Slobodka moved to Hebron. And then it was still called Slobodka and Hebron. And then when it moved to Yerushalayim, it was called Hebron, because it came from Hebron to Yerushalayim. So now, but then they split, they had a fight, and 20 years ago they had a fight, so there's a Slobodka and a Hebron. There's two yeshivas. So Rabbi Farbstein was the Rosh Yeshiva in the days when they were one yeshiva, it was called Hebron. And a lot of people learned in Hebron here in Eretz Yisrael. It's one of the biggest yeshivas. And so did this Menachem Elon, who was the Supreme Court Justice. So he had just finished his book, and this is like a serious book. And he was sitting next to Rabbi Farbstein on the bus. And I only heard this because Rabbi Farbstein told a friend of mine who was very close to him. So they were having a discussion, and they're old friends. They were happy to see. But the best part is they're on a bus. The Supreme Court Justice and the Rosh Yeshiva are on a bus together. Right? So at one point, Menachem Elon asked him, Avramo, did you see my new book? He said, I saw your book. He said, what do you think? Amazing. It's one of the most amazing books I've ever seen in my life. Menachem, you managed, and I've never seen anybody do this as well as you did. You managed to completely and totally take the neshama out of Torah. That's what he told him. That's what he told him. This is a Litvak saying that. You completely told. They liked each other, old friends, right? You could say that to him. You completely took the neshama out of Torah. No, Menachem Elon probably understood that. He was writing some scholarly work for university shelves and for Supreme Court. He was a Supreme Court justice. That's from you. That was his line. So, Chas v'Shalom to say that Menachem Elon was a Greek, but that's what the Greek would be very happy about that book. Right? What does he want? He wants a Torah book you can put on a university shelf and no one would even consider thinking about God reading it. Now, some people do that to Talmud Bavli. God's rarely mentioned in the book, right? I mean, not in the parts we learn in yeshiva. There's all the Agadata where the Eibishter shows up a lot, right? But in the parts that we learn, Baba Basra, we mentioned the Eibishter in Baba Basra. Why would you mention the Eibishter in Baba Basra? What's he got to do with Baba Basra? Baba Basra is all about two neighbors who decided they want to split up their chutzner and they have to build a fence, and should the fence be for bricks or stones or brambles? Right? It's got to do with God. Well, it's all God, but he's not mentioned. It's not there. That's why Chassidus says Chassidus is Nigla and Gemara is Nista. Right? Chassidus is Nigla, it's revealed Torah. What's there? God's revealed in Chassidus. You can't learn Chassidus and not see God. He's all over every page. Right? Where is God hidden? In what you and I call Nigla. Right? Gemara, Halacha. Is the Eibishter mentioned in Shulchan Aruch? He is. Hilchos Tefillah, Hilchos Kriya Shema. You have to sort of mention what Kavanah means. Hilchos Shabbos, the Eibishter mentioned? What for? What's the Eibishter got to do with Shabbos? No, he's got everything to do with Shabbos. He's got to do with Hilchos Shabbos. Seemingly nothing. But obviously everything. But that's, the Greek wants to take that away. So what did he want to do? Bikshu lakar chas v'shalom Yisrael, it's a hergish eloki sheba mitzvahs. To realize the mitzvah is a davar eloki. It's elokus. What's halacha? Baal Shem Tov said, what's halacha? Halacha is Rashi Tevis, hariu lavaya kol haaretz. It heralds to Hashem all of the world. Hariu milashon trua. The whole world is crying out the glory of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's halacha. Shekol mitzvahs, all mitzvahs, Hem chachmasi yizbarach, are the chacham of the Eibishter shelamayla miseichel hanoishi, which is beyond human intellect. Lavira michukei, that's lavir michukei, that everything is a chayk. And even more than that, ubikshu lakar chas v'shalom es hahergesh mitzvahs hem ritzoni yizbarach. They also wanted to uproot from the Jews the idea, the sensitivity, and it's interesting, the Rebbe uses twice the word sensitivity, that the mitzvahs are the ratzon of the Eibishter. Mitzvah nechor. So the first thing, so the Ois Dalet, was the Rebbe explained to us, the first thing the Greek wanted to do was take away the hergish of the elokus in mitzvahs in general, right? And to appreciate it, to think that they can all be understood intellectually and their source is intellect. No. And that's especially shayach to mishpatim, right? The person might think that. And we, interesting enough, in this mishpatim that we spend a tremendous amount of time learning about, right? We learn the Babas, yeshivas. And to uproot the hergish that the mitzvah is the ratzon of the Eibishter. What are you allowed to do? You're actually allowed to be the vehicle for the expression of the ratzon of the Eibishter. You can be the Eibishter's hand. What's my hand? My hand is just an extension of me, that when I want coffee, so I don't have to tell my hand to please pick up the cup and move the coffee to my lips. It just does it, right? Why? Because it's bottled to me, right? Completely. I don't have to tell it to do this. It's just an extension of me and completely bottled to me. So when I want the coffee, it just happens. Okay. When you do a mitzvah, what do you like? You like the yad, the Eibishter. What does the Eibishter want? He wants to pick up the cup. Okay, so in order to pick up the cup, so to speak, you're his hand. It's completely bottled him. It's an extension of him. It's a beautiful thing, an amazing thing. It's what a mitzvah allows us to do. The Greek goes crazy when you hear such a thing. Nah, it's just a bunch of behavior that keeps everybody in line and develops a certain social fabric and sociological reality called the Jewish people, that they share a certain style of dress and they share a certain style of behavior and they share certain holidays, and et cetera, et cetera. And this is what gives them, it's the fabric of the people. I mean, that's true also. There is that. If there were no, God forbid, there's one Jew left on earth, he'd still put on tefillin, he'd still keep Shabbos, he'd still eat kosher. There's nothing to do with being part of anything. It just is who he is. It's connected to the Eibishter. Well, Bezeh, now the Rebbe says an amazing thing. A couple of minutes, we'll see it. Ois Hey is really astounding. Tiny little ois. Bezeh yuvan lashon a Gemara, and from this we understand the language of the Gemara. Kish nichnasu Yavanim lahechol. When the Yavanim went into the Heichol, this is something we saw earlier in the Maimer. Timu kol hashmanim shebaheichol. They wanted to be matama the shemen shebaheichol. So now, what does that mean? Now, the Rebbe is about to explain this al pi Pnimius. Now, obviously, the Greeks did not understand Pnimius of Torah. So they didn't go into the Heichel with this idea in mind. Well, they did. They didn't know that that's why they were being Matam Hashem and Shebaheichel. Right? The Eibishter orchestrated, and this is all historical events. You'll have Parah saying something to Moshe Rabbeinu that's this unbelievable Chassidish vort in reality. Parah know about Chassidus. No, the Eibishter orchestrates events so that Parah ends up saying something that has incredible value. In terms of, saying something real. Why did Parah say that? Because the Eibishter put those words in Parah's mouth, and that's how they're said. And now, of course, obviously the words that Parah said weren't the words that are actually written in the Torah, right? Because Parah spoke Egyptian. He was talking to Moshe Rabbeinu. They were talking in Egyptian. They weren't talking in Lashon HaKodesh. Right? Okay, so the Eibishter translates that statement of Parah into what he really meant. Right? What was Panemius HaKavanah of Parah? So what was Panemius HaKavanah of the Greeks? Such that the Hashgacha Pratis was that the Eibishter had them be Matama the Shemen Shebeichel. And that goes for every historical event when you're talking about what Esav did and what this one did and what Haman did and what Achashverosh did. Why do they do all these incredibly holy things and teach us these unbelievable ideas in Chassidus? The Eibishter orchestrates events so that then we can understand what's really going on. So what did they really want to do? They really wanted to be Matama Shemen Shebeichel. But what does that mean? So let's see what that really means. They didn't know this, but they did know this. This is what they wanted to do, but they didn't know that Shemen Shebeichel represents that. But this is what it represents. The Mashmas HaLoshen Hu, Shekeshenichnasu LaHeichel, when they entered into the Heichel, Hine Ishtadlu, they went to great effort, V'nisamtsu, also great effort, L'tames HaShmonim, to Dafka be Matama the Shemen. And somehow they understood that this would help them defeat the Jews. B'chtei l'natzech chas v'sholem es Yisrael, in order to defeat the Yidden. It is interesting, that the Rebbe puts the word chas v'sholem right after l'natzech, instead of at the end of the sentence. Right? Shouldn't even be a second where you said l'natzech es Yisrael without a chas v'sholem first. So l'natzech chas v'sholem es Yisrael. You could just easily say L'Natzeach Yisrael Chas v'Shalom. No, right away Chas v'Shalom. I don't know. That's my own diuk, and it's just an interesting thing that the Chas v'Shalom is right away. You think it should be the end of the sentence. L'Natzeach Yisrael Chas v'Shalom. No. There should be any victory of the Greek Chas v'Shalom right away. Why? So what's Heichel? Ki Heichel hu Bina, hu Shemen hu Chochma. Okay. So we know that Shemen is Chochma. Everybody knows that, right? That Shemen represents the level of Chochma, a transcendent level. It's Tzaf al Kol Mashkin. It floats above. It's transcendent. We saw that earlier. What does Shemen relate to? Shemen always relates to Chochma. Okay, but why is Heichel Bina? Well, what's Bina? Bina. So what's Heichel? Heichel is the room, is the area, the big hall, right? Okay. So what's Bina? Bina is that place where all of your understanding is contained. It's your conscious intellect. Chochmah is the source of that intellect, but Chochmah is superconscious, right? It's the ability, the potential to understand something, but the potential hasn't come to fruition yet. The fruition of that is called Bina, Ani Mevin. That's why you can conjugate the verb Bina. You can't conjugate, you can conjugate anything in Lashon Kodesh, but there's no simple conjugation of the verb Chochmah, because there's no me there. It's the source of me, but there's no me yet. Where do I come into being? Where am I now in existence? Where's there conscious me? Bina. Ani Mevin. There's an Ani there that's Mevin. Why can I Mevin? Because there's this Kayach called Chochmah, which is the source of that. But the Chochmah is a state of Bittul. Chochmah is the Yud in Shem Hashem. There's Bittul, there's no Yisrach, there's no spreading out the Nit Pashtut, it's expressing itself yet. So Bin is the beginning of Ani. Ani Mevin. And what's that? That's the Heichel. That's the so to speak, all of the ideas in your brain. Right? That's Bina. Okay, and what's Shemen? Chochmah. So what did they want to be Matama? Chochmah Shebabina. What does that mean? Let's see. Ki Heichel Bina v'Shemen Chochmah. Shelamaylam Yiseichel Bina. We know that. The Chochmah is beyond Bina. Bichdei lahafik, again, Chas v'Shalom right away. Bichdei lahafik, to express Chas v'Shalom es mezimosam, their endeavors, which is what? Lashkichem teresechol avim echuk eritzanecho. To make us forget God's Torah, to move us away from God's will. So what's Pshat? What's Chochmah Shebabina? Bina is what I understand. The Greeks are very smart people. What do they understand? I can understand anything. It doesn't bother them. I can learn anything. As long as I learn it like they do. They're not interested in what I know. They're interested in how I think. Chochmah Shebabina is how I think. If I think like a Greek, I can learn Torah all day. It won't affect me in the least. That's Chochmah Shebabina. So that's why the Greeks were Matama Shemen Shebeheichel. Now, the Greek didn't understand Chochmah Shebabina. The Greek didn't understand that. Now, if you had asked the Greek this idea, he could express to you how important it is to think a certain way. That certainly he can express to you. Right, but he doesn't understand that the Shemen relates to one thing, and the being the Tama, the Shemen Shebeheichel relates to another thing. That he doesn't understand the chassidus of it. Okay, so the Eibishter orchestrates events. So the Greek does something that's a perfect expression of what the Greek wants to do. So what does he want to do? And it's such an amazing idea. He wants us to think a certain way, and if we think that way, we're putty in his hands. Because it doesn't matter what we learn, doesn't matter what we read, doesn't matter if we think the way he wants us to think, a certain cold, analytical, godless way of using intellect, then I can sit and learn theology. It doesn't matter. Right? Never forget my first year here in Eretz Yisrael, so there was a gentleman. Probably, I haven't read him for so long, so I wouldn't know. But there was something called in the old days Schocken Judaism. What was Schocken Judaism? There was a publishing house called the Schocken Publishing House, and they published a lot of Jewish books. But it was all, scholarly stuff. And so all of the Jewish mysticism that was, pop Jewish mysticism was published by Schocken publishers. And that was the stuff that you'd find in the hippie bookstore on 4th Avenue in Vancouver. You'd go into Banyan Books, and as soon as you walked in, you had to start talking mellow. Remember talking mellow? You had to talk mellow. You weren't allowed to really raise your voice above this. Hey, man, how you doing? What? How you doing? We were all young. We could all hear, so we could talk this way. Right? You had to talk mellow. And there was, probably sawdust on the floor or something in Banyan Books. And there was there was the Avodah Zarah section with all the Indian mysticism that all the hippies wanted to read about. And there was also a little Jewish section. And so the Jews with the long hair and the beads used to go, to read some Jewish mysticism. So there was Martin Buber and Gershom Scholem. Gershom Scholem was the guru of intellectual Kabbalah. So he was the head of the Jewish mysticism department at Hebrew University, originally from Europe, came here, and his students are still running the department in Hebrew University. So he gave a lecture. He was already an old man. He gave a lecture in Yerushalayim. So I went with a couple of friends because everybody had heard of Gershom Scholem. We were like, what is this guy? By this time, we were already in yeshiva, but what's this guy got to say? Because we all read his books and couldn't understand what he was talking about. So he said whatever he said. I have no clue what he said. I just remember one part of the lecture was that a kid got up and the kid had the misfortune to have tzitzis and a yarmulke. So already Gershom Scholem was going to be angry at this kid. So he said, can I just ask the professor or a doctor or whatever you call him a question? How can it be, if you can explain all these beautiful ideas about Shabbos, that you don't keep Shabbos?
Oh. It's a fair question.
Yeah, no, a perfectly fair question. So he answered in his, German, European accent. This I remember the lecture was in English. So I remember very well. I don't remember word for word, but basically, you idiot. I'm a historian. History of ideas. If I were teaching you Roman history, would I have to wear a toga? Wow. That's what the Rebbe just said. You can sit and learn Kabbalah all day long, and it won't affect you kihu zeh, because you're a Greek. The Greeks beat him and got him to think a certain way, so that even though he's sitting and learning Arizal and he's learning Zayar and he's translating it and explaining it theoretically. Now, they say, obviously I didn't know enough in those days, and I haven't read him for 40 years, 50 years, so I wouldn't know, but they say that he got it all wrong also. That's what the people who actually know the stuff say. So I'm not going to learn Gershom Scholem to find out whether he got it all wrong now that I've learned this for a while, right? But that's what they say, that he got it all wrong, right? Buber, someone once asked the Rebbe if they should read Martin Buber. So the Rebbe said an amazing thing. Amazing. He said, only if it'll bring the person closer to Yiddishkeit. He said, what's Martin Buber like? The Rebbe said, what are those books like? He said, they're like a copy of a painting. If by looking at the copy of the painting, you'll want to go find the original and see it, so then it was worth looking at the copy.
That's amazing.
But if you look at the copy and you think that, well, I saw the copy, so why do I have to see the original? So then looking at the copy is negative. Wow. That is such an amazing idea. And a lot of people, in all fairness, to Gershom Scholem and Martin Buber, a lot of people would, read their stuff and then say, well, I wonder what else there is, and ended up right in yeshiva. Right? But if you think that's it, it's just a copy of it. It's not it. It's not it. If reading it, you say, you see a Mona Lisa in a book and you say, whoa, I would really like to see the original. So then seeing it in the book was a good thing. Baruch Hashem, you saw it in the book. You got it a play. Where's the Mona Lisa? Is it in the Louvre? It's in the Louvre.
Yeah.
So you go to the Louvre and you go see the Mona Lisa. Okay. I saw some real Van Goghs. I must say, I was not into art, but that was an experience that I'll never forget. I was in London. I had to wait for my cousin. We were meeting up at some point in London sometime in the afternoon. I landed early in the morning. Spent all day just like walking around London, went here, went there, saw everything that I'd ever heard about it as a kid growing up. I saw Buckingham Palace and then Hyde Park and all these things that you hear about, and they were all there in like 5 blocks of each other. And then I went to the British Museum of History, which was absolutely fascinating, and saw the Rambam under glass, right? The original Ksavi out of the Rambam, the original Magna Carta under glass. That was pretty interesting. It's interesting stuff under there. And then went to there was an art museum right next to the British Museum of History, so I walked in there, and they had borrowed from the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, they had borrowed 3 Van Goghs. They were on the wall. And I'd heard of them, wow. I mean, it's like you could, Field of Arles was there, you could walk in, it's like you felt like you could walk into the painting. It was about this thick, right? Okay, and why did I appreciate it even more? Because I'd seen pictures of it in a book. Had to live under a rock not to have ever heard of Vincent van Gogh, right? I mean, like, where did you grow up? Right, okay. So fine. So I'd heard of it. So seeing it in the book. But if my reaction had been, oh, there's a Van Gogh exhibit, I saw it in the book, what do I have to go there for? So then, what a waste of time seeing it in the book. So that's what the Rebbe said about Buber, which is so amazing. And all that whole genre of, Judaism, so to speak. Okay. Let's just finish. We didn't finish the last words of this little piece, hey, here is basically the whole story of Hanukkah, in a nutshell. Right? What did they want to do? Ela shalim b'Torah v'kiyum mitzvos yirach mitzad haseichel. They wanted it all to be mitzad haseichel. If a Jew forgets he has a neshama, and also in all fairness, when you're dealing with other Yidden, if you forget to have a neshama, of course they have a seichel. Of course you're trying to talk to their seichel, but you're trying to get to their neshama through their seichel. You're not trying to talk to their seichel without. You talk to another Yid. You want to get him excited about Yiddishkeit a little bit. You're talking to his neshama. The way you get to the neshama is through the seichel, because that's how humans communicate. Seder, but there's a nefesh elokis behind there. People get so stuck in the nefesh b'hamis, they forget there's a nefesh elokis back there, somewhere lurking in the shadows. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
I remember reading one of Buber's books or two, and there was one